You think your mom is harassing you, but it's all in your head, right? Mom is just teaching you how to be a good daughter-in-law. By the way, you're very good at playing the victim. Laura narrating. She throws the meals I prepare in the trash and drops the clothes I've hung on the clothesline onto the ground. I asked Esteve, "Does that sound like teaching a daughter-in-law to you?" At my silence, Steve let out a mocking laugh and then said something unbelievable. "My name is Laura, I'm 28 years old, and I work as an office worker at a pharmaceutical company. Esteve was a friend from university, and we got married 3 years ago. I lost my parents shortly after I graduated. It was so sudden that, as an only child, I felt doomed to a life of loneliness. My parents didn't have much of a relationship with their relatives, so the funeral was mostly attended by their acquaintances and friends. With no time to grieve, I started working at the company that hired me as a recent graduate, and I met Esteve through a mutual friend. Out of sympathy, knowing I had lost my parents, Esteve often took me to his parents' house. From the beginning of our relationship, his parents welcomed me like a daughter, and I never doubted our good relationship. Even after we got married, I enjoyed cooking for them and the dishes my mother-in-law prepared for me. I wanted to continue working after having children. If I couldn't get the children into a daycare, there would be no one to help me with childcare, as my parents had passed away. When I expressed this concern to Esteve, he said, "Pamela will take care of that," and everything seemed to be going well. I ended up moving in with Pamela at my in-laws' house. My father-in-law was on a work assignment out of town, so it was just Pamela, Esteve, and me under the same roof. At first, everything was fine, but after 3 years of living with my in-laws and not being able to conceive, Pamela's attitude towards me changed drastically. She would tell me, "Laura, how many times do I have to repeat myself? You're the youngest in the house, so it's up to you to do the weekend chores." Pamela always burdened me with the cleaning and laundry. Even though I was living in her house and already doing most of the chores, it was as if she simply didn't like me. She would drop my freshly washed clothes in the yard and smear the dishes so I would have to wash them again. She would scold me for insignificant things and blame me for not giving her grandchildren. I already felt shattered inside, and Esteve's lack of support only made it worse. I told Steve time and again about Pamela's harassment and insults, but he always replied, "Are you imagining it? You're overthinking it." At that time, Pamela never insulted me in front of Esteve, so perhaps he couldn't believe his mother would do something so horrible. But even so, Esteve's attitude was unacceptable, as if Pamela were the victim and I were the villain. I realized I had no one on my side in my in-laws' house. Once Steve showed he didn't believe me, Pamela's harassment intensified. What used to happen behind my back now happened right in front of him. Hurtful comments and constant mockery. Finally, I got pregnant. When the worst of the morning sickness passed, I entered a calmer phase, but my heart was still heavy. Going on maternity leave and enduring Pamela's continuous harassment, and the fact that Steve not only didn't believe me but joined in with her, were the main reasons I felt I had nowhere to turn. Even Esteve, who was initially so happy with the news of the pregnancy, now joined in Pamela's mockery, calling me a woman who does nothing but eat and sleep. I knew the stress was bad for the baby, but I saw no way out. Despite everything, the only person I could turn to was him. I decided to have a serious talk with him, to tell him about all of Pamela's mistreatment and hope he would change his condescending attitude for the sake of our unborn child. I chose a weekend and approached Esteve, who was relaxing in the living room. "Hey, there's something I want to talk about." Esteve reluctantly looked up from his phone. "Lately, you and Pamela have been very cruel to me. When Pamela harasses me, you turn a blind eye and pretend nothing is happening. Could you please stop doing that?" Esteve, looking doubtful, stared into space for a moment and then focused on me again with a mocking smile. "You're exaggerating. What mom does isn't harassment or anything like that. How can you say that? Throwing away the food I prepare without touching it, deliberately messing up my room. That's not harassment. Maybe mom is just trying to educate you to be a good daughter-in-law. Why don't you understand?" His words blurred my vision with disbelief. I instinctively brought a hand to my belly and looked down. In a trembling voice I said, "I can't raise a child in this house. The mentality of you two would be a very bad influence on the baby. Maybe it's normal for you and your mom, but for me it's unbearable. I'm at my limit." My hand on my belly was shaking. A choked cry escaped my lips, but it didn't reach Esteve. All I heard was his mocking laughter. If it's so bad, why don't you just leave? Neither Mom nor I would be bothered by your absence. The suggestion left me frozen for a second, but then I exclaimed, clutching my belly, "How can you say that? I'm pregnant, you know." Esteve gave me a scornful look and let out another dry laugh. Exactly. You have nowhere to go if you get kicked out. Poor thing with no parents or home to go back to. His taunt echoed in my ears. I bit my lip and glared at him. I'm going to my parents' house. After a moment of silence, Steve burst out laughing. See? You'll probably end up sleeping on the street, bragging about going back to your parents' house. While his laughter continued, I pulled a large suitcase from the closet and started packing my clothes and valuables. Esteve wanted to believe I had no other options than his parents' house. He thought that out of stubbornness I would eventually come back. Pamela, who had overheard the conversation, came over and said, "Well, if you don't like the rules of our house, you know you can leave," as if I were the one to blame. I had no intention of ever returning to my in-laws' house. Once I was settled after leaving, I planned to send the divorce papers. After packing, I murmured as they continued their unpleasant laughter, "Goodbye." I was determined to raise my baby alone. They would never see my child's face. A year has passed since I left my in-laws' house. I gave birth to a healthy baby girl, and after struggling with single motherhood, I have not returned to that home. 3 months after I left, I sent the divorce papers, which were processed without any issues. I also filed for child support, but Steve hasn't paid anything, so I'll have to speak with a lawyer about that later. To cheer myself up, I stood in front of a luxury skyscraper that was holding an open house for a model apartment. I went inside thinking about buying a condominium. Where I live now is far from both my job and the nearest daycare, and raising a child alone makes it essential to have everything close at hand. Fortunately, I have the resources to take that step. After registering at the reception, I went up to the 50th floor, and when the elevator doors opened, I came face to face with someone just as surprised as I was. He was supposed to be working at a brokerage firm when we got married. When did he change jobs? Visibly uncomfortable, Esteve began the tour. His words were polite, but his eyes said, "What are you doing here?" The apartment was impeccable, close to my office, with underground access to a daycare, a park in the courtyard, and a 24-hour supermarket underground. An ideal environment to raise my daughter without depending on anyone. "I'll take this apartment." Esteve looked dumbfounded. I had come prepared to sign immediately if I found something I liked. However, he didn't pull out any contract. As much as I waited, just as I was about to ask, I saw his lips tremble. In a low voice, Steve said, "It can't be. A divorced single mom buying the top-floor apartment." His expression was a mix of skepticism and reproach. "Did you get the money from some rich guy, or are you doing something unsavory?" I stepped back as he approached me. "No," I said. "I sold my family's house for more than I expected." I told him what had happened over the last year. After leaving my in-laws, I returned to my parents' house, which was still in my name. Both of them had passed away, and the house was too big for me alone. The water garden, my father's hobby, added value to the property. Just before the baby was born, a buyer appeared. He wasn't interested in the house, but in the garden. He offered 5 times its market value. I explained that the garden was just a poorly maintained hobby, but he understood its potential and wanted to buy it. He even added extra to help with my living expenses. With that money, I moved into a nearby apartment and focused on my daughter without any financial worries. Upon hearing my story, Esteve's eyes lit up for a moment, and then, looking ashamed, he apologized. "I'm so sorry for everything that happened. Can we start over?" His confidence was palpable, as if he was sure I would accept, but I didn't extend my hand. "I can raise my daughter and live well without you. I don't want to live with someone who looks down on others." At that moment, Esteve's face turned furious. "You're rejecting my proposal to get remarried?" Behind him, a female colleague appeared with several contracts, curious about our long conversation. He glared at her, and his reproach shifted from me to her. He snarled, "It's wrong for a woman to be rich. Women should silently support their husbands and stay at home. Her face turned pale, and he continued his tirade at me. So that's it. Now you look down on me because I have money. You would have been better off as a lifelong servant in your husband's house. I turned to the sales guide who stood frozen with the contracts. I can't buy from a company that employs someone who speaks like that. As soon as I said it, Esteve spun around. The colleague, realizing I was talking about him, hurried over and apologized immediately, nearly dropping the papers. I'm so sorry my subordinate was incredibly rude to you, she urged. Please, you need to apologize to her too. Esteve seemed to understand that things were going badly and joined in the apologies. I'm so sorry. Please stop. I looked at him calmly. I'm not buying here anyway. I turned around. I'm sorry. I'll look for other apartments. Their faces fell. Wait, the colleague said. I take back everything he said. Just this one contract. Esteve looked defeated. Do you really think I would do business with you after everything you said? The outcome was clear. Esteve lost the sale and his reputation, and his boss was probably hoping that as ex-spouses we might sort things out. I felt no pity. I had loved the apartment, the location, the layout, but I couldn't waste my money there. With that, I bowed slightly and walked out of the apartment. No one saw me out. I got into the elevator alone and left the building without looking back. I walked away, looking for another model apartment. I later heard from Pamela that after losing that huge contract, Esteve suffered a pay cut and was sued for verbal harassment of a client, which led him to resign. He hasn't been able to find a job since. He takes refuge in alcohol and gambling while Pamela takes care of him. One day, I ran into Pamela at the supermarket. Between tears, she said, "My son doesn't work, he just stays at home and takes out his frustration on me. I'm sorry for everything. Please marry him again and come back." I replied coldly, "And why don't you leave if everything is so terrible?" Pamela's face sank in despair, and I felt a slight sense of relief. I bought an apartment in another building and returned to work after arranging daycare for my daughter. The money from the sale of my family home is enough to raise her, but I love my job and they invited me back, so I returned with a recent promotion. I live a full life, balancing my career and motherhood. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more incredible stories. Activate the notification bell so you don't miss any updates. We love reading your comments, so share your thoughts below. See you next time. Take care.